governance play in ensuring peaceful elections, and are institutions responsible for ensuring stability in the country failing us? Well, we discuss that in a moment, and of course later on we'll be joined by Lofty Matambo and Frida Mwaka live from RFUEA grounds, where the Nation Media Group is launching Mimi Ncaa initiative, which aims to promote patriotism, issue-based elections, peace and unity, beginning at the grassroots and spreading across the country. But before that, let's listen to voices of post-election violence victims on peace. All right, and of course, we all understand during the post-election violence, that is 2007-2008, we lost a number of people. That is over 1,300 people actually lost their lives to post-election violence, and of course, others, thousands, were actually displaced by the same. So what are some of the people who were mostly affected by the same? Well, listen to what they have to say.
Is ahead of the much anticipated polls of people who had been displaced from their homes in the 2007 and 2008 post-election violence have expressed concerns over remarks by some organizations that some community members had been told to vacate their land ahead of this year's next election.
Sisi tumeishi na amani na hatuna jambo lolote. So tungeomba tu watu wa serikali, watu wa siasa, watusaidie, watupe break ban forest.
Ninaingia mashinani sana na ninaongea na hawa watu. Sijai rudi nikiwa ninahuzunika kwamba ati walinifukuza, waliniambia. Kwa hivyo hilo jambo halitufurahishi sisi kama wamama. Babu, wakati mambo kama hayo yanatokea, wamama na watoto ndio mara nyingi huwa wanaumia.
Ujumbe bora.
Gabriel Kudaka, NTV.
All right, and of course, listening to what they have to say, as far as peace is concerned, the majority of them say, I have forgiven the people who were responsible for either us losing our loved ones or actually being displaced. So, well, this morning, we just want to understand what role does governance play on peaceful election, given that we're just 2 months or 3 months shy away from the general election. So, of course, the question is, what role does governance play as far as ensuring that we have peaceful elections during the elections and even after? And, of course, to join us with the discussion in studio, we have Honorable Aidan Canaan, who is Elders Member of Parliament. Thank you very much for coming by, Mheshimiwa. And we also have Sheikh Hassan Olinado, who's the National Chairman, SUPKEM. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And we also have Dr. Danvers Makori, who's the Commissioner, NCIC. Thank you very much for making time for us this morning. And joining us via Zoom is Irene Kibagendi, who is the Chair, Evangelical Women Alliance. Good morning, Irene. Thank you for joining us this morning. And of course, a little bit later on, we'll also be joined by Mbuki Mburu, who is a public policy and youth development advocate. But before she comes in, let's just start with the gentleman on set, and of course also with Irene. And I'd want us to just give ourselves a scorecard as far as how we have performed, because we represent different institutions. And I'll start with you, Honorable Aidan. A scorecard in terms of leadership, political leaders. What would you give yourselves?
Thank you. I think first of all we need to understand what constitutes good governance. Good governance, by the definition of United Nations, there must be public participation, there must be equity, there must be transparency, there must be accountability, there must be adherence to the rule of law. Okay. Now in the Kenya context, of course all has not been good, but if you look at the stages in our development, political, social, economic development, you realize that there must be at times when we may have goofed. But comparatively, in the African continent, in the Horn of Africa, in the East Africa, I will say we have fairly done very well. We have had our own challenges, 2007, 1982, and a number of other small issues here and there that affected the lives of Kenyans. But generally speaking, if you compare ourselves seriously, I wouldn't say we have reached where we ought to have been or where we ought to be, but compared with our peers, we are doing fairly very well.
Fairly very well.
Yes.
Fairly very well.
Yes.
We'll
underline
the fairly.
Room to do more.
Yes.
Yeah, and
that
is what actually Kenyans right now should be preoccupied, because the past is the past. You can use the past actually to learn, to use it for the present and predict
what will happen in the
what
future.
will happen in the future.
Yeah.
And that is why, you know, if we think backward, then it may not be very good, it may not be very rosy. And that's why history is very important. History is very important so that we can get lessons from historical events, contextualize them, conceive them, use them now to project and build on a brighter future. And that's why history is actually history of particular event is very important.
There's some people who say do not really dwell on the past, but again, like you said, history is important because it reminds me of where we were and where we need to focus on. Okay, Dr. Danvers, NCIC has come under fire a number of times, almost every single day. So what would you give yourself as far as NCIC, but also as a country?
Winnie, thank you. It's good to have my good friends and colleague, Sheikh Hassan and Mheshimiwa Hinan. I'll say this. First of all, as a country, we'll give us 60%.
60%?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we are not, as Mheshimiwa said, not too bad, but we still have a long way to go.
Okay.
So objective is 60%. And I think as an institution, also, I'll put myself in that category of 60%.
Okay.
And then, of course, I get it. We get come under fire, rightfully so. But you see, Kenyans love soccer, Kenyans love football, and the referee is always criticized depending on which team he's penalizing and blowing the whistle on. So he's never, the referee's work is not to be popular. We're not running for political contest. We're not in the political space to run for political contest per se, or popularity. Ours is to make sure the rule of law, as Mheshimiwa said, is adhered to. Our institution in the law enforcement arena that make sure the laws of the country are there too, especially in this election process. We know what we've gone through. As a matter of fact, the people you just shown us here, this institution was born out of that experience, 07, 08. That's how NCC came from, so that we don't have to go back there.
Yeah. So
therefore, we can't afford to be popular. We can only afford to make sure the country is steadfast, is peaceful, is cohesive.
Okay.
Therefore, when somebody infringes upon a law, because we have to choose, Winnie, whether we are a nation of the rule of law, as we are intimated, in terms of governance, or a nation of rule of men.
Okay.
You see?
Yes.
So it's the rule of law. Therefore, if you infringe upon that law, well, of course we'll call you out.
But the law in itself
Yeah.
seems to somewhat sometimes be like in a gray area where, and especially what we're seeing now as far as leadership is concerned, and of course I'd want Honorable Ncaa to touch more on the same as far as the leaders. What we're seeing right now, yes, we understand it's the campaign period, but then again, it's more of insults and name calling and, you know, hate speech.
Yeah.
And of course, NCIC has been tasked because the majority of the times people are like, fine. So NCIC only comes in when something has already, you know, a problem has occurred. You do not come in terms of prevention of the same. But before we focus on the same, let's just speak to Sheikh and understand, as religious leaders, what scorecard would you give yourselves and the country as a whole?
Thank you. Bismillah. I think we are not really doing quite well as a country in all sectors, because governance, as Mheshimiwa have actually said, is adherence to the rule of law.
Okay.
And constitutionalism. And what we are facing in the country today, there is deterioration of the adherence of law, because we have seen institutions of government doing things outside the rule of law, which actually threatens each and every citizen of this country. The second aspect which I feel in this country is that we have relative peace, but peace is only talks about the absence of war. But it cannot be peace if we have people who are living angry. Yeah. We cannot be peace if we have people who are sleeping in the streets and also living in informal settlements with no services. In fact, to me, that is really a trigger. It just requires a trigger. And that is why in every electioneering circle in the country, we have a lot of tension because of the potential of erupts of certain what you call violences, because of the situation we are living in. Okay. So to me, I think the religious sector have tried their level best. In fact, today in this country, the religious leadership is only kind of the only voice of reason in the country, because we have lost the political class. We have lost the political class because of what you have just mentioned a while ago, that we are not seeing really people who are advocating for the posterity of this country, but we are seeing personalization of politics, where insults dominate the political platforms. And that again takes away what we really expect to hear or to see. Because as a leader, We really want someone in the podium to state what he will do for the country, what he will do for the citizens, for the people he wants to represent. But we have no interest to know who has stolen what, because we have the institutions that are supposed to deal with
to
those
handle
kind
the
of
same.
things. Yeah.
But then again, of course, there are a lot of intimation as far as religious institutions, which have actually become sort of like a platform, you know, for people to spread hate, people to somewhat politicize the church, and I would say other religious institutions. So, of course, the question is then, where do you stand as religious leaders in terms of advocating for peace? Because most of these politicians would actually come to religious institutions and, you know, preach hate, if anything. So where do religious leaders stand in this? I mean, do you have a scenario where you as, for example, as a sheikh, stand up and say, no, we cannot talk about this in places of worship, because this is where people come to find solace, to find peace, to find encouragement. So we'll also address that in a moment. But for now, let's speak to Irene Kibagendi, Chair, Evangelical Women Alliance. Irene, once again, the church, again, still under fire as far as, first of all, agreeing to have these politicians stand on platforms and, you know, start insulting each other while still in charge.
Thank you. The Evangelical Women Alliance of Kenya is set to arise at such a time as this, when we see the political temperatures rising. We realize that women, we cannot keep quiet anymore. We have been quiet for quite some time, and things have been happening. Violence has been happening, and in the year 2022, we decided to arise, according to the scripture, where in Judges chapter 5, verse 7 says that there was nobody to arise in Israel, and I, Deborah, arose. And that is what we are out to do as women of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. We are an arm of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya that focuses on issues that relate to women as agents of change in their families and their workplaces. So women have a place in the society. And when we speak out, we know that there will be a change within the context of our elections, especially when we see the boy child being used as an instrument, not to do something constructive, but to tear down the society, and we are the mothers. So in that context of the elections, we want to promote peace. Faith-based organizations are known to come out or to promote peace in the society, and that is what we are out for. And in this case, we have even planned for a function, an event, to call all the women across the country to be able to come together and pray together, because we realize that prayer changes things.
Okay.
So that is what we are about. Thank you.
All right. And of course, just recently we had a conversation about, excuse me, women in leadership, and of course, where women stand as far as, you know, political, especially when it comes to like political, you know, positions. And the majority of the things came up as far as challenges facing women. And one of them was the fact that just being a woman in itself in politics is a problem. So of course, we'd also want to understand where you stand on the same, as far as then how do we get more women to get into these positions so they can champion for rights of almost everyone, not only the women and girls, but also everyone, and like you said earlier on, the boy child as well. But right about now, we also have Mbuki Mburu, who's finally here with us. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, public policy and youth development advocate. And right now, what we're noticing in the country is the fact that the youth are being used by political class to somewhat foster or their agenda, right? So you represent young people and of course championing for their rights as well. Yes. What scorecard would you give the young people?
In terms of the scorecard,
yes,
I think I would say it's 50-50,
Right.
maybe not 50, maybe 70-30, I would say
Okay,
that.
70, okay.
Because at least in these elections, we've seen a little more of participation of young people in terms of forming, going for elective seats, but really participating in discussions. But really, when you're talking about inclusivity of young people, we still don't have young people in decision-making platforms. And you'll find that when you're talking about governance, harmonization, coordination of elections, young people are a critical stakeholder. And when we're talking about that, we are talking about governing all the way from the grassroots in a way that we engage young people in whatever governance we are having. If we are talking about, for example, the NCIC, how are they engaging the young people in the communities? But also just thinking about how do we ensure that we've seen a lot of voter apathy in the registration of voters, but that means that young people are pulled away from participating in elections, and that means that they don't feel like they're stakeholders in the whole process. And I think that's why I'm talking about maybe 70-30. We still have a long way. I think I changed my position because a bit of there's a lot of top level young people participating and all that, but really there's a lot of young people also left out. And even when you're talking about churches, spaces where they're in political parties, how are we ensuring that we're engaging young people meaningfully in a way that they also feel like, these elections, we are part of it, we are the organizers, and therefore we have a bigger stakeholders to ensure that we have unity, but also ensuring that we are part of prevention and we are prevention of violence, but also just ensuring there's peace, because peace is not just absence of violence, ensuring that we can be able to coexist, with the different communities and different people within the community.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, when we talk about peace, I think in the country, it's a matter of very few spaces, counties that are experiencing peace. There are others that are really, really suffering. Right now, there's a lot of instability, political interference, we could say that. And of course, someone might ask, so as the youth, and like you said, 70%, well, okay, 30% we still have a long way to go. Someone might ask, so for the youth, I mean, do you really have to wait for someone to come and tell you, hey, it is your time now? Because initially we used to hear cases of youth are the leaders of tomorrow, but majority of them are saying, no, we are the leaders of today. So what about the 30%? What do we need to do more to make sure that they join the 70% so that, again, we experience, cohesion and peace and unity and all those things, but the youth actually championing for the same. But Honorable Kanan, as far as then leaders are concerned, and like I said earlier on, we understand we are in the campaign period, there's a lot that usually is usually said during the electioneering period. But as far as then leaders understanding the role that you play and understanding how important it is for you to just spread a message of peace and unity. But what we're seeing right now is a total disconnect from what peace and cohesion it's all about. So the question is why? Having very well understood the importance of peace and why we need it in the country, why do we still experience cases of hate speech now?
Thank you. I think that's a very good question. You need also to ask yourself, in the formation of nation states, why do you have the police? Why do you have the military? Why do you have NCIC? Why do you have different organizational roles? It's simply because of this, that you don't expect a perfect society.
Sure.
That being the case, politics is a very difficult field. And by definition, the latest definition is the art of the possible. So the art of the possible encompasses so many things.
Yeah.
So for me, first, some of these things actually starts with individual accountability. You have to be accountable to yourself. We must also have public accountability. We must have institutional accountability. And finally, we must have state accountability. And the roles are defined. That is why I may be partisan in certain political thoughts or certain political, aspirations or thinking. But we will have a neutral appetite like NCIC, like the church, all appetite will say, look, in the context of what constitutes the national good, I may have gone astray out of this. And this is why the role of the government has been over the years to build the fabric of the society through institutional, by strengthening institutions. NIC, luckily, I saw when the NIC Act actually was passed in Parliament. This is one of the first things. Actually, NIC is not one of the constitutional commissions. It was there long before the current August 2010 constitution, simply because at that time, the framers or those who are around saw that there was need to have this particular institution. The question, and they are funded by the taxpayers. So the question they'll be asking themselves is, are they accountable?
Okay.
Are they
but are you accountable yourself?
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Are they accountable? Are they meeting the public expectation? Because they are supposed to be the neutral arbiters as far as certain political discourses are concerned. So for the politicians, I think this is clear. We have a country. We have a country. All of us are supposed to be accountable to the national interest. We may differ. Like right now, we're here before this platform. But each one of us left a certain, we left somewhere where we are both, homes.
Yeah.
That is our private dwelling. But so sometimes people confuse.
Yeah.
And this is where actually we need to rein in. We can't disagree on our national interest. Our national interest is what holds together this beautiful country called Kenya, where all of us have invested, where we have inherited from our forefathers. Our forefathers struggled, they paid their blood, they did a lot of good things. It's our turn now, it's our opportunity, it's our period that we must also transit to the next generation, and therefore we will be held accountable. Whether you are in the church, he is my head of the Muslim organization.
Yes.
I'm a member. What he does must contribute first to the well-being of the membership of the Muslim organization, to the well-being of the people of Kenya. What he does as a commissioner NIC must contribute to the well-being of the people of Kenya because they are paid as taxpayers. My friend here, the good lady here, as an advocate of the youth, must also be prepared to inculcate those virtues and values that will make the youth responsible, not only future leaders, but today leaders. Because the dynamics of what constitutes actually youth, like if you go to today Finland, those Scandinavian countries, the leadership is completely changed. Most of them are actually
very young people. Okay.
So
everybody should be accountable.
Everybody
that is
should
what
be
you're
accountable.
saying.
But in our context today,
politics,
and sometimes I need to ask, you need to ask actually yourselves. You are the voter. You are the voter.
Okay.
You are the final decision maker.
Yeah.
Don't be complaining. What you do, we're all competing for political space, limited political space.
Very limited, yes.
And sometimes when something is limited, is you understand the challenges. Everybody tries to struggle for the same.
For the same, yeah.
Make good decision.
Okay.
And that is why all of us must appreciate that topic, the role of good governance in peaceful election. What brought together President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Right Honorable Odinga, coming from completely different political ideologies, suddenly they decided to have a handshake. It's not because of anything else. It's because of the national interest
of the
country. That is exactly what is going to transit into a coalition.
Okay.
And ask yourself, what defines a coalition, grand coalition? What defines, in the historical context, grand coalitions actually come about when there is war, when there is national depression, when there is serious crisis, when there are issues that are cross-cutting. In our context, where we were in March 2018, the country was almost on the brink of war. So our two great politicians, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta, had to think out of the box, put aside their petty political differences and say, for the sake of Kenya, this is the route that they are going to pursue. And that is actually what will contribute to
the topic of discussion today.
Topic of discussion. And that is why we expect the majority of Kenyans actually to subscribe in and support, and that is where the future is.
Okay, but then again, but still, yes, political differences came together for the sake of the country, and we must say, yeah, we experienced a bit of peace. But then again, what we're experiencing right now is somewhat like, is it really peace, or is it then somewhat dividing the country? NCIC has also, again, Honorable Kenan is like, yeah, NCIC needs to do its part. The church needs to do its part. But it's like he's somewhat, pointing fingers and saying, you take responsibility, take responsibility. But I've not had what the politicians are doing,
you need to understand.
because they're doing that. Yeah.
Let's put
like
this
forget all these entities.
Let's
yes.
put this in the context of the law.
Yes.
Criminal responsibility is individual. When you break the law, it is yours. The politicians, we are not above the law.
Yeah.
All of us subscribe to the law
yeah.
and constitutionalism and the rule of law, and by extension, as a responsible member of the international community.
Yes. Okay.
So meaning, notwithstanding the politics, notwithstanding the struggle of particular individuals to create a political niche themselves, we must all be accountable to ourselves as
ourselves.
politicians,
Yeah,
and
but
be role models
to the people.
to the
But
people.
as of now, do you feel that we have the correct role models as far as the political class is concerned, given what we're experiencing now in the country?
I don't think we have role model. I'm actually surprised when he's talking about accountability and role model among us politicians. Like those things don't even go together.
Yeah.
And my problem is that sometimes he's talked about criminal liability. The unfortunate thing is that these young people are there to support these politicians to make it to, to the seat. But then when it comes to crime liability, then we are the people who are suffering. We end up in prisons and all this. So it's really a wake up time for us as young people to ensure that we don't have we are not utilized or we are not manipulated to be able to participate. But really to also say that also during elections, we have a lot of extrajudicial killings happening, and especially among young people. Yeah. And when we are talking about governance of elections, we must be able to ensure that our security apparatus are, neutral and they are serving the people. And they, Kenya has ratified UN Resolution 2250, ensuring that we are preventing violence and, enhancing it, and really ensuring that these security apparatus are really encouraging, an enabling environment for everyone to participate in elections. But also looking at how do we ensure that security apparatus are not on one side. Yes. I think that seems the case. Yeah, that is the challenge that we have.
Yeah, and even as NCAC, Dr. Danvers, in terms of, again, you've come under fire, like I said earlier on, and someone might say you're somewhat like biased as far as holding people accountable. And for this case, we're talking about the politicians, where someone might utter words that might seem to again, create some bit of intolerance, but it's like just get a slap on the wrist and then that's it. And others might actually more or less do the same or even worse or slightly, lower, but get like the biggest punishment. So there's a bit of biasness when it comes to holding people accountable, and for this case, the political class.
Are you saying as a fact, or are you asking a question?
I am asking you because now that is what people are saying.
Yes.
Because you're positing it is a fact.
No, it's what it seems.
Yeah. Okay. And that's perception. So actually, one time in one of the round tables of leaders, actually, the diplomatic corps, that question came up because leaders of one faction that we have right now accused us of that. So we produce a list of people, especially in this context, political leaders, who have cases against in court. Okay. And majority of people in that list actually belonged to not their faction, the opposite faction. Okay. So we said, okay, you're accusing us of being biased against you, but in this list, majority of people are in the opposite faction that you are. So how is always a biasness? You understand? Perception, of course, can be reality, and we take it. But facts are facts too, and they're stubborn. So I understand that, like I said, as when you blow a whistle, the fans of one team and the players of one team will say, oh, you're being biased against us. But the law is clear. We have to choose, Winnie, whether we are a country of rule of law or the rule of men. And when we enforce that, that is an outcome that comes. And we operate the political space, in the political reality. Now, I happen to espouse the Aristotelian view when it comes to democracy. Aristotle was very critical of democracy. So to give you context of where we come from and underscore a few things that even Honorable Kenan has said. Now, you see, here's the reality we face in the country, given an example I'm going to give you, an analogy, not perfect. If you're in a ship and rowers those galleons, not modern ships, this is an Aristotle he used to give, and that to elect somebody to rule over them or to steer the ship, they will elect their own. They used to be the most in the ship. But yet the captain is schooled and knows how to steer a ship, and there are very few of them. The irony of democracy is two. Number one, in essence, it forces or it divides people. It's a dichotomy, choose A or B. Pure democracy, the danger of pure democracy also undermines the rule of law. Pure democracy in its sense. Why? Because right now, if we say in this context we are 4 here, actually 5 now here, if we say the 5 of us want to execute you, we'll execute you regardless of the law. You understand? If we say right now we choose here to vote with the Sheikh and with Shibiwa, we'll execute you, you will die. That's the danger of pure democracy. But the rule of law, which we bequeath ourselves the Constitution, says no, the institutions which keeps in checks and balances the extremes of democracy. Now, we the people, you see, we always blame the politicians and rightfully so to an extent. But the question is, since 1992, we a democratic state, and in 2010 we chose a very progressive constitution. The question is then, these guys don't get themselves there.
It is we who elect.
Exactly. So this hypocrisy sometimes puzzles me to an extent. There's a cognitive dissonance to reality because we choose them, and then we have a problem with them. They're reflective of us. I've said here actually in your station, good people cannot elect bad leaders. Neither can bad people elect good leaders. You understand? So we look to ourselves first before we blame to them. And now we come institutions that are supposed to safeguard democracy and the process of democracy, which is election. Election is a construct and an instrument in governance, so that we effect democracy, which we've chosen ourselves. So the question is, in this space now, how do we ensure it's safeguarded? How do we ensure, for example, the young people are participatory? As a matter of fact, I would say this. You know, we've been critical of young people and voter apathy. I think it's a good thing, actually. I know we're really critical of it. I think actually it's a very good thing. You see, I feel it's a good thing. Where Washington Kenan comes from, they've chosen a different form of democracy. They could negotiate democracy, which now we come in and they elect leaders. And it's critical to an extent. People criticize it, but it tends to work for them. And it serves to an extent. It serves the people that other you're chosen. You know, sometimes and we've seen in our country, the people come to the ballot, we're like, wow. Now, you see, for me, the young people are looking at the reality of governance, and they say, hold on, why should we participate?
And yet,
and then it's a reality. So to me, that's a form of protest. You understand? And they're saying, no, we will not be part of this. You're giving us a false choice, and we're refusing to be part of it. That's a statement too.
But does that solve anything? Because now you're resisting.
No, see, the thing is, here's the issue. Here's the issue. You see, I know where you're coming from. The issue is not solving anything. The issue is, here's the issue, okay? And there's still young people in governance. We are there. There's a lot of, I mean, I can tell you, there's a caucus within government, even in parliament, there's a caucus of elected leaders who are young people. We work with closely. But here's the thing, and hear me very clearly. You see, the question, does it solve anything? So, youth participation cannot just be purely on voting process. Now, because even if they vote, they're voting within the parameters of the factions that are right now. It's either A or B. Those parties or those factions, what is the youth interest and policy they have? You understand? At what?
It's what they sell to.
What are they giving the youth? You know, it's just tokenism. They'll say a few things. But in reality, actually, they really don't. They really don't.
Won't do it.
You understand? All right. So for me, it's an expression they have. I would say at one point, maybe the one day our youth will wake up to realize that, you know, we actually can make the difference. We should be the difference makers in leadership. And that is why, as Rachel said here, if you go to Finland, the Finnish Prime Minister and half of her cabinet are all young, and they're women people. And young folk, and they're doing it.
But don't you think it's somewhat the role of NCAC to make sure that assist some of those youth who are like, no, us, we're not going to participate in this thing, you know, do a bit of like civic education to these young people, so that then we prevent cases of, you know, like she talked about voter apathy, where they're like, no, absolutely not, thank you very much, because we cannot. But before I speak to Sheikh, we have our very own Lofty Matambo and Frida Mwaka at RFUEA grounds, where of course the Nation Media is actually part of launching, and this is as far as good governance is concerned. So Frida and Lofty, over to you. Okay, Frida na Lofty, hatupati sauti zenyu, but you look really, really good today. It's like we did not get the memo to dress the same as you guys, but of course we'll be joining them in just a moment. But Sheikh, again, listening to Honorable Kenan saying, listen, everybody should be accountable. NCAC says, yes, there's a bit of, Kenyans are not being honest with themselves as far as electing these leaders that at the same time we come and complain about that they're not doing this. They're actually perpetrators of violence and all those things. So as far as then the church is concerned, which again has been blamed majority of the times, and that is, when I say the church, the whole, religious institution. So then what role does it play to make sure that, listen, we do not hear these things as far as hate speech and especially in podiums in churches?
Yeah, I think Honorable Kenan mentioned something which is interesting because many Kenyans may actually not know the role of religious leaders, even towards the handshake process. Yeah. But religious leaders do their things behind the scenes. We never come out and talk about these things, but we are the initiators of the handshake. But what happened after the handshake, we lifted to political class and then we walked away. But we are the people who did all what you saw behind the scenes until we ensure that the President Uhuru Kenyatta and Prime Minister shake hands and move on. What happened after that is another story. We cannot again come and explain.
But you're the ones who worked with them to bring them sort of together.
No, we did our part.
Yeah.
We did our part. We had our own roadmap. Either they follow the roadmap or they not follow. That is something else. I don't want to discuss it. But I just want to assure you that the religious leadership in this country are working and they have done their part immensely. We work very closely with NCIC in terms of trying to mitigate the whole question about the hate speech. But interestingly, in our country, we are becoming a country of bad manners because all of a sudden we are realizing that NCIC exists. As if NCIC doesn't exist for 4 years, it only comes into being in the 5th year or in the 4th year towards election, because that tells us we have a problem with our political system in the country, because we have leaders who doesn't want to talk about issues, but they try to really either create hate, spread hate, and sometimes whip emotions of innocent Kenyans. And that is why now when we are in the political season, then we have NCIC, running up and down as if they were not there before. Okay. And I think it is just a matter of us coming out as a country, try really to do things in a more careful manner. On the question of the further apathy and the role of the young people in this country, I have been, of course, all of us have been youth anyway, to different time. And I've been very active in the youth movement. I served youth movement for 20 years of my life. And one thing I can actually tell you now, and what you are seeing today, why young people are not interested in even registration as voters, the narratives that are being propagated by the political class are a little bit scary, because sometimes you are told the voter doesn't count. The one who matters is the one who counts the vote. So now when you tell the young person that way, that you don't matter, even if you don't vote for me, the person who matters is the one who counts the votes. Okay. You are actually discouraging the people from participating, because why should I wake up in the morning, like in Nairobi, people wake up at 3 o'clock to go and queue, vote for that day, but they are being told, your voting doesn't matter. What matters is the person who is counting the vote. So either true or false, but it creates certain uneasiness for someone to see, why should I really struggle? And finally, on that question, is the role of corruption and money in our politics. Because today, for you to be a serious politician, you must be carrying some money in bags and gunias, the way
and
we
especially
talk
now
about.
with the campaigns, you have to have money.
And when we look at this thing, it has actually forced us as the people of this country to glorify corruption. Because where do you get money? Why should someone spend 100 million, for example, for a seat that it doesn't pay that amount of money? What is the interest of this person? Because we are not asking ourselves, because why should somebody spend more than what he will earn within that cycle of that period? Then that tells you it is not actually the salary that they are looking for, it is not the service they are looking for, but there is other avenues which they'll actually get the money back to themselves. And makes it very difficult for us to hold our leaders to account. Because how do you hold a leader to account and he paid his way to the leadership? You can't question, because you took the money from him. When they come home over the weekend, we go requesting for school fees. We have funerals. We have hospital bills. We want him to give, and we know this one man or one lady within a constituency of 300,000 people. There is no way he can be able to serve, to give each and every person a kilo of sugar. So where do we expect this person to get money? You realize that the leadership now, we are forcing our leaders to become the brokers of the economy, bringing down our economy altogether and making us people of bad manners.
I'd want Honorable Kenan to respond to the same. But before that, let's cross over to RFUEA grounds where Frida Mwaka and our very own Lofty Matambo are there, and that is as far as the launch of Mimi Mkenya initiative, which again is being launched by the Nation Media Group. Lofty na Frida, habari asubuhi, mwapendeza sana.
Njema sana, asante sana Winnie. Dada Winnie ukiwa studioni na wageni. Shukran kwa kusema tuwapendeza. Frida, hujambo? Assalamu alaikum.
Mimi sina neno, assalamu alaikum kabisa, na bila shaka mtazamaji, hii leo ikiwa ni tarehe 23 mwezi wa pili mwaka 2022, bila shaka shirika la Nation Media linajivunia Lofty kunani?
Linajivunia kwamba tutachukua hatua kuwa mstari wa mbele, kuchukua hatua moja mbele, nyingine na nyingine, kuwaleta wa Kenya pamoja, kuunganisha. Manake leo ni uzinduzi babu kubwa wa mpango na kampeni ambayo itachukua miezi 6 kutoka sasa hadi siku ya uchaguzi tarehe 9 mwezi Agosti. Kampeni ya nini, Frida?
Bila shaka Lofty, na wacha nikwambie, kuna waandishi ambao waliandika, waimbaji pia vile vile wakaimba, na sote tunasema kwamba tutasalia kuwa Wakenya. Lakini haswa Mkenya ni nani? Unaponiangalia, ninapokuangalia, je, unajihisi kwamba wewe ni Mkenya? Hebu tujaribu kitu Lofty. Tulianza na assalamu alaikum, lakini je, hii unaitambua? Suba?
Naitambua, ni ya Kimaasai. Na tukisema Muriega?
Ni kwega mono.
Wamkata?
Namo kanesa.
Ama umetinda?
Na zala mukaze.
Zala mkato simanya nawe.
Simanya we, uchererwaze.
Uchererwato tomaliza kule Giriama. Lakini zaidi ni kwamba naona umewakilisha bendera za Kenya unazo. Maana naona nyekundu inawakilisha damu yetu, ambao ni umoja. Unaona nini kwangu kwenye bendera ya Kenya?
Mimi naona tu rangi yani nyeupe ya amani.
Naam. Pia kuna samawati, japo samawati iliyokoleza iko kwenye bendera?
Sidhani kama iko, lakini kijani kibichi iko, ambayo inawakilisha ardhi yetu.
Naam. Bila shaka ardhi, kijani kibichi na yote ni katika mpango mzima huu ambao tunauzindua, ama Nation Media imeungana na wahisani mbalimbali ambao tutakuwa tunakujuza katika muda sokwa mrefu. Lakini zaidi swali ambalo tunajiuliza, Mkenya ni nani? Na ili kupata majibu haya tutakuwa tunazungumza na wanahabari wetu Frida na Wakenya kutoka maeneo mbalimbali. Mombasa tuko na nani?
Mombasa tutakuwa naye Kevin Mutai, lakini kwa sasa tunafahamishwa kwamba dada yetu Bridget Ncaa yuko tayari katika eneo la Nakuru pamoja na Lois Wangui akiwa Eldoret.
Lakini vile vile tutakwenda Nyeri. Nyeri kutakuwa na Melita Oletenges kuzungumza na watu wa mlimani.
Naam.
Ila kwa sasa
tufunganye virago mtazamaji, tuelekee moja kwa moja hadi Nakuru. Bridget Ncaa, je, wewe ni Mkenya? Kumbuka kwamba hashtag ya leo mimi Mkenya. Bridget, kazi kwako.
Kwa Mkenya na kutoka kitovu cha siasa hapa nchini, tunaweza kuzungumza na wananchi wa Nakuru, na niliweza kukutana na kijana mmoja. Alinieleza kuwa ni mara yake ya kwanza kupiga kura mwaka huu, na aliweza kuzungumza nami na tumeketi na yeye hapa hivi. Unaweza tusema majina yako, na wewe ni mara yako ya kwanza kupiga kura, unahisi kama wewe ni Mkenya?
Mimi ni Mkenya.
Naitwa nani kwanza? Angalia tu mbele.
Sawa, jina langu mimi naitwa Joseph Junior. Ndo mara yangu ya kwanza kupiga kura. Najivunia kuwa Mkenya.
Tueleze tu kama kijana, unatarajia viongozi wa aina gani hasa wakati huu siasa zimechacha sana?
Mimi napenda tungepata viongozi wenye wangetunza Kenya vizuri, viongozi wenye hawana hasira, wenye wangepeleka Kenya vizuri, si waipeleke wanavyotaka wao. Viongozi wenye maarifa, wenye wamekaa Kenya uongozi wanaijua.
Sasa hizi vijana unaambiwa ni viongozi wa kesho. Wewe utapiga kura mara yako ya kwanza, utaangalia kama wale viongozi wanajiuza sera zao watakuwa vijana, utawapia nafasi ya kuongoza?
Hapana, kwangu mimi viongozi ambao tunafaa tuwape kura ni viongozi wenye kwanza wamekaa serikalini, wanajua mambo Kenya, wanajua Kenya inaendaje. Sio Wakenya tudanganywa, tunapewa pesa na vijana, tunaambiwa hivi na hivi, tunapiga kura, alafu mwishowe inakuwa Kenya tunakuwa mbaya Kenya.
Tuseme pengine unatoka eneo gani la nchi hii, na pia huko unaona kama watu watadumisha amani kwa njia gani?
Mimi niko Nakuru, nakaa Lakeview. Pale vijana wenzangu ambao tumekata nao kura, wengi wanapenda tu kuchagua tu mtu mwenye ana maarifa kwa serikali na ni mtu mwenye atatutunza vizuri. Sio tunadanganywa na pesa, tunapewa pesa tupige kura, hapana.
Haya. Ujumbe wako kwa Wakenya wengine, vijana wengine ambao itakuwa mara yao ya kwanza kupiga kura, wafanye nini na wazingatie nini, amani ama watumike vibaya?
Mimi ningependa wangekubali tu wachague kiongozi mwenye nchi itakuwa na amani, nchi itakuwa kwa utulivu, sio nchi inakuwa kama tuko utumwani, tunanyanyaswa, hapana. Tuchague kiongozi mwenye atatutunza vizuri.
Asante. Kuna wengine unaweza ongezea tukimalizia, ama umeweza kujieleza kwa mapana na marefu?
Ni hayo tu. Vijana wenzangu mimi na washauri wangependa tu hata tumpe baba kura, ni sawa tu bado.
Haya, asante. Ameanza siasa zake hapo kama kijana, lakini swala kuu ni kwamba amesema ni umuhimu sana kwa vijana kuweza kudumisha amani na kutotumika vibaya na wanasiasa. Kumbuka kuwa ni miezi 6 ya kuhubiri amani nchini, lakini nawapeleka kaskazini mwa bonde la Ufa ambapo mwenzangu Lois Wangoya amekuwa akitegea kuzungumza na wakazi wa eneo hilo. Lois, kwako.
Asante sana mwenzangu Bridget Ncaa kutoka kaunti jirani ya Nakuru. Mtazamaji, mambo vipi? Kutoka mjini Eldoret, kaunti ya Uasin Gishu, vile tumefika mzima ili kuweza kufanikisha kampeni hii ambayo itakuwa kwa miezi 6 hivi ya Mimi Mkenya. Sasa kabla ya kusonga mbele kidogo, tunataka kujua, unapozungumza na Wakenya wanauliza mimi wao wanaona Mkenya ni nani? Ukiwauliza wao wanahisi Mkenya ni nani? Je, wanahisi wao ni Wakenya kutosha au bado kuna mambo ambayo yanawatatiza? Ili kuweza kuingia katika mawazo ya Wakenya kutoka upande huu wa kaskazini mwa bonde la Ufa, nimejiunga na vijana wawili. Tutaanza kwa jina lako kwanza, alafu tupate jina la mwenzako. Pengine tuambie jina lako na unafanya shughuli gani kila siku katika ujenzi wa taifa. Naomba tuvae barakoa. Tuambie jina lako. Pengine tuanze na aliye tayari. Jina lako na unafanya shughuli gani za kila siku katika ujenzi wa taifa?
Okay. Kwa majina naitwa Kelvin Langat. Mimi ni Vice Coordinator Youth and Governance Kenya. Kwa hususan tuseme kiongozi wa vijana Youth and Governance Kenya.
Kwa majina ninaitwa Ben Kibet. Mimi ni kati ya viongozi wa vijana na Ruto upande wa Eldoret.
Haya Kibet, tuanze na wewe. Ikiwa nitakuuliza swali, Mkenya ni nani? Unaweza kutupa taswira gani ya Mkenya kwa maoni yako, kwa kila siku yako hapa nchini? Unaweza kuhisi Mkenya ni nani?
Asante sana Lois. Ninataka niseme kwamba Mkenya ni yule mtu ambaye amevumilia sana. Ni yule mtu ambaye anaamuka asubuhi kuenda kutafuta riziki. Ni yule mtu ambayo wakati mwingine sauti yao haisikiwi. Na vile Mkenya ni yule mtu ambayo kwa kawaida hana matumaini kwa sababu ya hali ya hanga na hali ya maisha katika Kenya hii.
Asante. Pengine tukija kwako, tupe mtizamo tofauti. Mkenya ambaye ni kijana ni nani?
Mkenya ambaye ni kijana ni Mkenya ambaye hana kazi, ni Mkenya ambaye amefinywa kwa kila mahali. Upande wa ushuru, upande wa chakula, upande wa kulipa rent ya nyumba. So Mkenya ni mtu amefinyiliwa kabisa.
Asanteni kwa hayo, lakini kabla ya kufunga kwa haraka tena sana, Mkenya ambaye ni kijana ana mchango gani katika nyakati hizi za uchaguzi? Sentensi moja tu fupi.
Tunajua kwamba vijana ni 70% kati ya wapiga kura na wao ndio wanachukua nafasi kubwa katika kupiga kura, lakini kwa mara mingi unaona pia hawapewi nafasi ambayo wanahitaji.
Asante sana, pole sana, muda hunasi, lakini Frida na Lofty mweza kusikia vijana kutoka kaunti ya Uasin Gishu wakisema Mkenya ni ambaye anaamka kila siku, anatia bidii nyingi, lakini mara nyingi serikali vile siasa huwa inawafeli katika siku zao za kila siku. Si maneno yangu, mwasikia wenyewe ni kutoka baadhi ya wenyeji wa kaunti ya Uasin Gishu. Lofty.
Kongoi Huyu ni Lois Wangoi akiwa katika eneo la Eldoret. Kazi nzuri sana pamoja na Bridget Ncaa kutoka Nakuru.
Kabisa, na bila shaka tunasema kwamba katika ile kaunti ya Uasin Gishu utapata pale wanariadha ambao wamepeperusha bendera ya Kenya katika mataifa tofauti. Kule wanasema chamge, unasema missing.
Zaidi ni kwamba nimeona wakizungumza na vijana pale akina Lois pamoja na Bridget, na takwimu za shirika la takwimu nchini Kenya haswa kutoka kwa sensa mwaka 2019 ni kwamba 70% zaidi ni vijana nchini Kenya, umri chini ya miaka 35, na ndio maana kampeni hii mahususi inalenga vijana, alafu tena tupanue zaidi kufikia hata wazee, manake chini ya siku 168 tutakuwa tunaingia katika uchaguzi mkuu. Tunatarajia nini Frida tunapoelekea pale?
Mengi yanatarajiwa Lofty, na cha kufurahisha ni kwamba hata mwaka huu vijana wengi wamejitosa ili kuingia katika mchakato mzima wa kupiga kura, na ndiposa hii leo sisi tunapiga kelele na tunapaza sauti kusema kwamba siku zote daima salia kuwa Mkenya. Mtazamaji, tumekujuza mengi hii leo, lakini mimi nataka uingie kwenye simu yako, ingia pale kwenye rununu, mwambie jirani, mwambie hata adui kwamba hii leo tunasonga na hashtagi mimi Mkenya. Lofty, tutarajie initiative.
Tunayotarajia ni kwamba nilipoingia pale nimeona gwiji fulani ambaye wanamshabikia sana, mwanamuziki ambaye amegonga vichwa vya habari katika muziki wake, na sijui nikisema hivyo ukilinganisha na ukiendanisha na mada yetu siku ya leo na mpango mzima na campaign mimi Mkenya initiative, unamkumbuka nani katika kichwa chako Frida?
Mimi namkumbuka si mwingine barini Eric Wainaina, alisema daima mimi Mkenya, mwananchi mzalendo.
Lakini zaidi ni kwamba tunatarajia kwamba kuna nembo itakuwa inazunduliwa, kuna bendera ya mimi Mkenya, kuna magari ya Nation Media ambayo yatakuwa yanazinduliwa, yatazunguka Kenya nzima kusambaza ujumbe huu.
Na mtazamaji, na bila shaka pia ni mchakato ambao utachukua takriban miezi 6 hadi siku ambao Wakenya watapiga kura, ikiwa ni Agosti 9. Mengi itakuwa tunakuletea kwa muda usio mrefu, lakini kwa sasa naona kwamba kuna maankuli. Lazima tuende pale tunyafue 2 3
mahanjumati.
Alafu pia vile vile tutakueleza mengi zaidi ambayo atakuwa anajiri hapa, lakini kumbuka kwamba hashtagi mimi Mkenya
initiative.
Naam.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're watching us. This is Your World, and today it's all about the role of governance as far as peace is concerned. And we all understand that we're just a few months away shy of the general election. So it's very, very important for all of us to remember that the country belongs to all of us. So we need to make sure that we ensure that peace is in the country. And of course, as far as the launch, that is a campaign by the Nation Media Group, that is Mimi Kenya Initiative. And of course, we want you to use the hashtag Mimi Kenya Initiative and just help us understand. When you think about a Kenyan, all right, what does that make? Okay, so keep tweeting at NTV Kenya at Lubembe_Winnie. But right about now, let's cross over to Mombasa, where we have our very own Kevin Mutai. That is from county number 001. Good morning, Kevin. How is it at Mombasa?
Good morning, Winnie. It's quite a sunny morning here in Mombasa, very lively, and indeed it's a very good opportunity here to also contribute on this particular important topic as the country heads to the polls. It is a sole responsibility of each and every individual to ensure that the country becomes peaceful before, during, and even after the 9th August polls. But let's just quickly get into it and sample the views of the residents right here from Kisimani, just along the Malindi Mombasa highway. Kwanza kabisa anza kwa majina, waitwa nani? Alafu tueleze, je, wewe Mkenya?
Kwa majina naitwa Abdalla Abdurrahman, mimi ni Mkenya halisi.
Taifa linapojiandaa kufanya uchaguzi mkuu wa Agosti, je, pengine ni ujumbe gani kama wewe mkazi wa hapa Kisimani ungependa kueleza Wakenya, hususan kuhusu umuhimu wa kuwa na amani kabla, wakati wa uchaguzi na hata baada ya uchaguzi?
Ujumbe wangu kwa viongozi, wanasiasa, napenda kutoa ujumbe, tena ujumbe wa demand, ambao tuna demand tuwe na kampeni za amani hadi kwa uchaguzi wa amani. Manake Kenya ni yetu, tutabaki kuwa Wakenya, na baada ya uchaguzi bado tutabaki kuwa kama Wakenya, tutabaki kuwa kama mandugu, kama majirani. Kwa hivyo uchaguzi ni wa msimu, utakuja na utaenda, lakini sisi tudumisha amani yetu na usalama wetu, na vijana wajiepushe kutumiwa vibaya, na viongozi nao wajiepushe kutumia vijana vibaya. Maanake tumeona kuna wasiasa wanaamini ya kuwa ukizua vurugu na fujo ndo utatoboa katika uchaguzi, na hiyo ni kitu imepitwa na wakati. Hatutakubali mwanasiasa yoyote kutumia vijana kuzua vurugu. Vijana watumiwe kwa njia ya sawa kwa kampeni za amani hadi tuingie kwa uchaguzi wa amani. Na pia sasa ukisikia manunguniko ya wananchi, wanasema wenyewe watajiepusha na mwanasiasa wa kutumia vijana vibaya, watajiepusha na mwanasiasa wa vurugu. Hiyo ni misemo iko inaenea na kila moja ameshika huo msemo.
Abdalla, pia kuna idara tofauti katika serikali ambazo za kabiliana na pengine matamshi ya uchochezi, kuchochea vijana. Je, pengine himizo lako kama wito wako kwa idara hizi hususan kama ipi?
Mimi naweza kutoa wito katika idara kama hizo,
kama vile NCIC,
DCI, wawe wanachunguza kabisa mwanasiasa mwenye kutoa cheche za uchochezi, za ukabila, za ubaguzi, wawe wanaweza kumchukulia hatua mara moja, asisazwe na ikiwezekana hata afungiwe nje ya uchaguzi.
Naam, kwa hakika pia acha nipe tu nafasi dakika moja tu tueleze kwa majina, waitwa nani, watoka wapi, wafanya nini?
Mimi naitwa Mohamed Manuel Akiwa, natoka Kisimani ward hapa. Mimi ni taxi driver na naimiza vijana wenzangu tusidanganywe na pesa tulete kelele ama nini. Tufanyeni uchaguzi wa uhakika wa ukweli, na tusidanganywe na wakubwa tupige kelele ama tumzome mwenzetu. Kama mheshimiwa anaongea ile kupiga kelele si vizuri. Vijana wenzangu nawaomba jamaa, tusidhulumie, yani tusitumiwe vibaya, sababu sisi tusifuruge mikutano watu wengine, na tuwe wamoja sote ni kitu kimoja.
Na je pengine kama kijana waamini kwamba una uwezo wa kuleta mabadiliko katika taifa hili, hususan kutokana na uongozi wa nchi hii?
Ndio, naweza kabisa, sababu mimi nikisema sitapiga kura, si unaona itakuwa mimi kura yangu tayari niko nayo na niko tayari kupiga kura. Na kitu muhimu ile nasema vijana wenzangu na wahimiza sana wakuwe macho na tusidanganywe na pesa 500 tupigane wenyewe kwa wenyewe jamaa, na tusiitwe ukisikia election yote ya pesa.
La mwisho kabisa, juzi wakati wa kampeni za Azimio katika uwanja wa Tononoka tuliweza kushuhudia hasia na hata vijana waliweza kulimana pale kidogo. Je, pengine uliona kama hiyo ni taswira gani katika taifa hili?
Walifanya vibaya sana hiyo picha hiyo, lakini sasa mimi naweza sema kama hiyo ilivyotoka juzi huko, si hao vijana wengine, si makosa yao, ni pesa, wamepatiwa pesa, ndio kifujo yote ile vita.
Asante. Well, Winnie, that's it from Mombasa. You've just heard the locals, some of them just expressing their views on what they want the leadership of the country to execute as we prepare for the August 9th polls. Back to you in studio.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin Mutai, holding fort for us in Mombasa, as well as Frida and Lofty, who are here in Nairobi at the RFUEA grounds, and not forgetting Bridget Ncaa, who is in Nakuru, as well as Lois Ongoi in Eldoret. And of course, this tells you how important this conversation is as far as, creating awareness and campaign as far as peace is concerned, given that we're just 6 months shy from the general elections. But let's come back to the discussion this morning. And of course, in studio, the panel is here. Very, very big panel today, if I can say. But again, Honorable Kenan, in terms of, again, given what the people are saying on the ground, but also Sheikh Leonardo also pointed out, and this is as far as politicians somewhat dishing out money. So do you feel that sometimes you have that pressure to just hand out, do like a bit of handouts here and there to get your votes? Because again, voter bribery has been like a very, very big issue in the country. So is it that you feel the pressure to do so because that is what the people want?
Again, the framers of the current constitution, actually, when they came up with a whole chapter on national ethos, it didn't just come out of the blue.
Yeah.
It came as a result of an informed national collection, national interaction with what the citizens actually wanted over the years. And that is why, in our own wisdom, we decided to have that particular chapter. That being the case, I want to commend the Nation Media Group for hosting this very special program, because the time is good, it is timeless, it's also, I think, been very pragmatic, because Mimi Kenya just reminds us the obvious.
Yeah.
Because it's a good initiative, because it's a very good initiative. I must commend the Nation Media Group, and I hope the same, your competitors also will do the same for the sake of outside actually their commercial role, because basically you are there to not just to inform but also to make money. That being the case, you see, that's why I said that politics is a very difficult field. It's out of the possible. Resource mobilization is one critical component in any political activity. It's important because you need posters, you need to move, and that is why IEBC and other political players have been struggling actually to have some sort of moderation in campaign financing, because election generally is not a one-day event. It's a process.
It's a process, yes.
That process actually encompasses so many things. Luckily, as Commissioner Makori has said, we have one of the most reformist, one of the most pragmatic, one of the most, let me say, encompassing constitution in the African continent. Now, of course, some people will say it's a very expensive document, it is this and this, but that notwithstanding, it literally addresses almost all issues that Kenyans actually aspire to have since independence. So what that brings in, I wouldn't want to talk for an individual. Like I'll tell you, when I first joined politics in 1997, I didn't have a penny. I competed with a giant, political giant. So that aspect of monetarization or commercialization of politics, I think generally perception. General perception.
All right.
General perception. But then you need to ask yourself, you as an individual voter, are you going to vote simply because you have been induced?
The person has given you like 100 shillings.
Or you will vote simply because you have issues that are in tandem with what you expect from this particular politician in terms of development, in terms of employment opportunities, in terms of contribution to the national well-being. There are a number of things that you need to look at. So that question is perception. General perception that politicians must dish out. It's not true. It's not true.
But
it depends with the
cases,
particular.
sometimes we even see them like in broad daylight, you know, someone just handing out money.
It depends with the individual. It depends. Generally, there's perception. You know, perception these days has become a very bad, one of actually most used, you know, communication barriers. Let me say this. It's like you say, there must be money. We must do this. It's not true. It's not.
But we've had a number of politicians who just come out and say, listen, maybe with the amount of money that I have, when I go to see my people, they're like, Mheshimiwa, oh, there's a burial. Oh, Mheshimiwa, I need this. Mheshimiwa, we have like a church fundraising and all those things. So some politicians actually say that on national television and said, listen, I sometimes have to use my own money so that when I get to the office, no.
Using your own money means, first of all, you must have transport. You must have posters. You must prepare T-shirts. You must be in a position to fuel your car. You know, those are basic things. And at the end of the day, when you are elected, you also get some, you know, you are paid by the state. The same taxpayer actually pays you.
Exactly.
So you are not working for free. I'm sure Commissioner Makori is not working for free. My friend, my sheikh here is working for free because for him, it is serious religious obligation.
Honorable Ada just twisted this whole thing, but it.
No, I'm just right to tell you this. That is the reality.
Okay, do you feel, because we also hear a lot of youth who are like, fine. So, and right now we know, right? We have two giants who are vying for the top seats in the country, right? Yes. So we hear a lot of people say, fine, me, I'll just go to your campaign because I know you'll dish out like some amount of money, and then I'll also go to your opponent's campaign because I'll also get, you know, the money. So at the end of the day, it's not that I'm coming to your campaign because I want to hear what you have to say, your manifesto, selling it to me. It's all about how much money can you give and how big a crowd you can pull, right? So listening to Honorable Kanan,
I completely disagree with him, and he knows for sure he's lying to us. He knows for sure, and let me just use a recent example. Actually,
it's parliamentary.
It's a parliamentary language, but it's true.
You can use the word misleading.
Someone just said recently, if you cannot lie, find someone who can lie better for you. So okay, all right.
Yeah, I think he's misleading us and of course lying, because just the other day, even just not politicians, for you to actually sustain yourself to be a kingpin or to be an influencer or kingmaker, you also must dish out. And we have seen even in the recent meeting with the Mount Kenya youth, you know, young people were called for a meeting and they were given a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely.
And and that person is also actually not going for a seat. It's because they want to control the elections, or they want to control how the the outcome of the election. So I think that's, I mean, he's misleading, and that is one of the challenges that we have. But I really wanted to respond to Dr. Makori, if you allow me, because I think if I live here without that response, I will not be comfortable. Yeah. But also, when he was appointed to be a commissioner, we as young people were happy because we are seeing the representation of us in a commission. But then he gets in and he makes a statement here, and I'm actually very surprised when he made that statement, when he said that voter apathy is actually okay. That's a problem for me, because when you're talking about patriotism, when a young person has just said that, you know, mimi ni Mkenya ni kungangana, you know, kutafuta, you know, like it's a struggle. Like being a Kenyan is a struggle by itself. And that is a problem, because then that person feels like, you know, I'm not part of this country. Yeah. And when we have voter apathy, then that shows that, you know, I can be radicalized. I can do whatever I want because I don't have a stake. And that's my problem right there. And if you look at, for example, leadership is not just what you do when you're in power or when you're in leadership. It's the impact that you leave when you're gone. So really, when you're saying that governance and in the current situation, and we're talking about transition, it's what will have you know, after this government that will have an impact. That is what we remember for that government. Whatever legacy they will have in terms of ensuring that we have peaceful elections is what we remember as young people. And when we are saying that young people are not participating, it's a problem, because we'll be left with a country that we don't even care about. We don't, I mean, it's what do I have? What can I take out of this country? And when we have that lack of patriotism, we can easily, you know, ban this country. So we must be able to ensure that we are involving young people in every discussion. And I'm hoping that even NTV, as you're doing Mimi Kenya campaign initiative, let's involve young people, because they are very critical stakeholders. And let's ensure that they are, you know, they are out there, they are the image, and because we are 75% of this population. Absolutely. If you leave us out, we are not at stake, and we will not care about this country.
Everybody has been left out because we constitute like a bigger population. But still on the same, Dr. Makori, in terms of voter apathy a good thing? Absolutely not, because again, we are preaching about we all need to participate, we all need to play a role, we all need to be accountable in terms of making sure that the country is peaceful, but also the fact that it's not only about elections, even after elections, because right now, I think a few days ago, and even now, there's a hashtag you know, trending on Twitter, and that is lower food prices, and I'm pretty sure you've seen what the young people are saying. We do not really care about how much money you have in your pocket, because, and especially when it comes to the political class, you can afford to buy all the food, but then there are some people who are not able to afford to buy this food. And just yesterday, again, the number of those statistics released, and this is the number of people who are in urgent need of food assistance, and that is, it has grown to 3.1 million. That is in February, from 2.8 million that is in December. So it's a lot, not just the general election, but then again, what happens after. So Ncaa, and especially that case of voter bribery, totally against the law, but we see that happening, you know, day in, day out. A number of people are actually crying about the same, but still, no arrests have been made. Nobody is being charged from the same. And even if they do, it's like just a slap on the wrist and then life goes on.
It's called facilitation.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, let me just, before I'm going to answer you. My good friend Sheikh Hassan said something very important. So that I can respond, and I gave why I said it is actually a good thing. See, Sheikh Hassan articulately put it how Kenyans, being one of them, I woke up at 5 in the morning last time to vote.
To go and vote.
I did. Okay. And you tell me my vote doesn't count.
And you voted for somebody from your tribe.
No, actually, no, I didn't. Because I voted in Nairobi, so there's nobody.
We don't know. That's personal. That is the bit, you know who you voted.
In Nairobi, I didn't have that option, not the luxury, so I voted for whoever I voted for. Now, what the young people are saying, see, we need to say, listen to what I'm saying. What they're saying is what Sheikh Hassan is saying. They're saying, listen, something is wrong with the system, okay? Something is wrong with the system. This apathy, they're saying something is wrong. We need to fix it. You understand? They could have said, oh, well, let's register and endorse the malpractice that we have, the dysfunction that we have. They're saying, no, we'll not endorse the dysfunction or the malpractice. We'll stay away. Okay. So what they're telling us, we need to fix it. That's why I say it's a good thing. Like, listen, you guys, something is wrong with this whole system. We need to fix it. As you rightly said, for example, about bribery and giving money to the election and the electoral process. A lot of money is involved. Fact, okay? Is it because of inequality? I don't know. Is it? There's many factors to it. I was in Zambia not too long ago during the election, okay? I was there 6 months prior to, I was an observer, in the Comesa observer. And then a few weeks, even days to election. I can tell you, Sheikh Hassan, you will not think there's an election in that country. There were 0 posters even to the day we landed in the airport. You could never tell it's an election. If an alien comes from Mars today and lands in a country called Kenya, in Nairobi, they will know there's a spectacle happening, whatever you call it.
There are
you understand?
Billboards all over
Billboards
the place.
for what we are doing, for what we are talking about.
Yeah.
There's something is just not right. And what the young people are saying, they're saying, listen, you gotta fix this system.
So
okay?
who is the person who is supposed to fix it if the young people are not?
So that's what I'm saying. In our part, actually, we've really put a lot of effort, resources, and money and time to do that in voter civic education, especially in formal settlements in Nairobi. How the commission is set up, we represent the region, and my politics is in Nairobi, and I understand Nairobi very well. The quote you just given about lower food prices, before there was this, do you know for a fact 61% of Nairobians have 1 meal a day? For years, before we get to that part, okay? So for us, we engage in the minimum to machinani. I come for the so we've done that. And now, in what we have hotspot areas in this region, together with the Inter-Religious Council, where SUPKEM sits, and NCCK, in Nakuru, in Uasin Gishu, especially young people in these regions, in the forefronts. Border riders, our first symposium was with them, second was border riders with young people in this country. We had measures really to bring them, to build what we call a critical mass. First of all, we can build resilience against corruption, violence, and incitement. And also now deputize them to be partners with us in pursuing peace and cohesion, so that at least as a country we know for a fact can have peaceful. So we're not just sitting back. We're doing our best, given the resources that we have, to make sure we're engaging young folk, especially, as rightly saying, 70% of this country is truth. Yes. Yeah. So whether it's in the cities, whether it's in the rural areas, we're doing that together with sister agencies in this process of the IBC, so that at least for at least there's that engagement in the process, and we can protect our democracy as we go through the election process.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We need to go on a break in just a few, but just allow me to talk to Irene Kibagendi, who is the chair Evangelical Women Alliance, as far as then the role that women can play, and especially women leaders in your capacity, just to make sure that, number one, we do not experience a case of, for instance, like voter apathy, but at the same time help to foster peace during election and even after, because again, the women play a bigger role, as far as, number one, ensuring peace, not only in the, small unit that is a family, but also, countrywide. But then again, we still see very little representation of the same. So why is this the case?
We have experienced in the past that transition comes with violence, and we know that everybody has a role to play in their capacity, especially women. We interact. We interact with our children, we interact with our husbands, we interact with our brothers who are taking the spaces of the politics. And our role as the Evangelical Women Alliance is to ensure that women are rising and they are taking their roles. And they are also, if somebody feels like this is the time for them to take up the political role, they can be supported by other women. So we are asking women to make change in their spheres of influence. A woman is a nurturer. A woman has soft power. We can be able to use that which God has deposited in us to bring peace in the nation. And we are saying no to violence. We know that women are the most affected population. When there is violence in the country, women and children are the ones who suffer. And so if we take our position, the one that God has given us, in our families, in the church, in the nation, And we call upon everyone. You know, there is no one who is small, there is no one who is big, to just arrive. We know that there can be a change. And the apathy that we are talking about, the voter apathy, is because of what has happened in the past. If you remember the 2007, we went through the process and no one foresaw what would happen. And we are saying that now we need to strategically position ourselves, especially before the the date of the elections, to be able to ensure that we are standing on the right platform. And the Evangelical Women the Evangelical Women Alliance is actually providing this platform to all the women in the country. It is not a movement for a church, just one denomination. It is a ministry for all the women in Kenya to belong and to feel that we have a voice, a united voice as Kenya, as Kenyan women.
All right.
And we know that we are not going to go into chaos anymore.
All right. Okay. And of course, like the message here today, it's all about accountability. Like each and every one of us has a role to play as far as fostering peace in the coming general election. But of course, there are a number of challenges. For instance, the lack of financial independence of the IEBC. There's that aspect of weak citizen agency. And of course, the failure of voters to sanction corrupt leaders, misinformation and voter bribery. I mean, it's a lot of issues. And of course, aspects of political violence, and not forgetting the attendant violation of rights by security agencies. Of course, we're going to address all those things. And then is it all lost as far as hope, right? As far as then steering the country back to the right track and just ensure that we have peaceful election and even after election. So keep tweeting at NTV Kenya, at Lubembe_Winnie. Remember, it's all about Mimi Ncaa initiative. And of course, this is a campaign launched by the Nation Media Group together with its partners, just to make sure that we foster peace and unity in the country. So what role do you play as a Kenyan to make sure that there is peace in the country? Again, keep tweeting at NTV Kenya, at Lubembe_Winnie. It's all about peace in the country. So we're taking a short break. See you right after. The conversation continues. Bye. All right, the conversation goes even during the break. Welcome back. Show is your world, and it's all about governance and, of course, the role that it has as far as peaceful elections is concerned, because we all know we're just a few months away from the election. So what can we do, each and every one of us, okay, to make sure that we contribute towards peaceful elections, but also elect leaders who are deserving of the offices and the positions that they are vying for? So keep tweeting at NTV Kenya, at Lubembe_Winnie. The hashtag is Mimi Ncaa initiative. And what we're asking you is, what role do you play as an individual, as a Kenyan, to make sure that we foster peace and unity in the country? You want to call in live as well? Do so. Do you want to ask any question to any of my panel? Feel free to also do so. The numbers are down on your screen. But right about now, how about then we address a case of institutions, right? Where we've had a lot of, some would say, interference as far as institutions is concerned. For instance, the judiciary, there has been complaints and complaints as far as there's no independence as far as the judiciary is concerned. IEBC, again, is one of them. It's supposed to be independent, but of course, there's a lot of interference as far as that is concerned. So Dr. Danvers, I want you to respond in terms of then this aspect of interference, and of course Sheikh also wants you to respond to the question of interference that is between the church, that is the church, the whole religious institution, and the independence. And where do you draw the line in terms of not interfering with the government business, but also the government business not interfering with, you know, the religious institutions as well? But Dr. Danvers, you also talked about an aspect of funding and resources in terms of fostering, you know, peace and unity. Is this like a major challenge as far as, for instance, Ncaa is concerned, that you're not somewhat able to deliver as far as fostering peace and cohesion in the country?
I mean, two loaded questions. I'm going to be brief to answer them. First of all, let me start with the resource. I mean, you cannot do your mandate if there's no resource. That's a fact. And the reality right now is there's a challenge in funding right across the board, not just us, things across the board. We work close with other government agencies, especially in the security sector. And I know the challenge they face, we face, in terms of just giving the resources to execute our money with security apparatus. It's a reality. Due to COVID and other issues, the government is really low on cash. A member of Parliament who oversight and also legislation that they can tell us more. And it's a struggle. So with the little that we have to be innovative. So we can't just sit back and say, oh, we're not going to do anything because we have money. And really it's forced to be innovative. We engage other partners and our partners to make sure at least we can execute our mandate. Because we are, at least, as Mheshimiwa said, there's accountability issue aspect. So when we are called, for example, to, he oversights us, by the way, just to let you know. When he calls us, when he summons, I won't say, well, I didn't do X, Y, and Z because I didn't have money.
There's no money.
Yeah, you understand? When Buki here will make noise on social media, that's not an excuse. They just want to know why isn't it he's not doing what he's supposed to do. You understand? So we do what we have to. And we are lobbying behind the scenes to make sure there's at least resource to it. The issue of interference, in our constitution, I think we have to understand checks and balances. Okay? And it's an important aspect of governance. And that's criticism, whether it's the judiciary, legislature, the legislature, and the executive. Now, in a democratic system, and I said about the rule of law, you see, in a pure democracy, it undermines the nature of the rule of law. Now, we have actually what we call, I think, the accurate word of governance we have used in democracy is polity, whereby we have rules of law, the rule of law, we have a constitution that underpins and guides the foundation of our democracy. And within that, we have prescribed a way, as a people, we bequeath this, actually says, we the people of Kenya bequeath this into progeny. You understand? Now, within that constitution, there's the way government is out to express itself, okay? Now, when you understand that, actually it safeguards. Parliament has a critical role in oversight, in legislation, okay? They are very critical, especially in how the executive does its role. Actually, judiciary gets a lot of flack. I tell people, when it's all said and done, you better thank God that we have a judiciary to an extent in this country that it is what it is today, because that is your how do you call it, your last stopgap measure. Because if today, because of my position, I do something that is wrong to Buki here, believe you or not, we go to the judiciary, they, for the most part, they will do what is right. You understand? So she's protected. Now, there is always that tension and reality in government. Let's be real. I like speaking the truth. There's always that tension and reality, because those who allocate money here, okay, will feel if the money is not used properly or against them, they're like, hold on, we're not going to give you money. And those who make the judgment, they're like, listen, we will have to judge what is right sometimes against them. So there's that. It has been the case. But the underpinnings of our democracy states that there has to be checks and balance. Okay, so there's oversight, and depending on what form, which arm of government is. So sometimes that we call it. There's independence, there's interdependence. Okay, we are independent commission. The IBC is an independent commission. There's interdependence. You still need money from Treasury. You still need the police. You know, so you still need them. You cannot do without executive. So that is what sometimes is overlooked as interference. And yet it is independence.
So there's no balance between interdependence and interference.
There is.
You think there's no money, but then again, there's also a case of corruption.
Right? There is. Listen, in policy, okay, there's policy in operation. So in operation, you're independent. Okay. Nobody's going to tell us what to do as a commission. We do what we want.
Okay.
No. Believe me. I know we're accused of that even at IBC, but
Yes.
I know there is. It's not like there isn't pressure. But believe me, we have to execute our mandate independently, okay, on operation. But policy-wise, there's certain policies that you have to pursue that is consistent with the administration that is in play. It's a reality of governance.
Okay,
yes.
But let's just say that you have a long way to go as far as that is concerned. Okay, all right. Sheikh, very briefly, because we also need to cross over to our FUA ground. So in like 10 seconds each, as far as governance, I know what role do we have to play, each and every person of us, as far as ensuring that there's peace during elections and even after? What would you say? 10 seconds. Very little.
Well, actually, has left. Actually, something I wanted really burning. That,
okay.
The problem that we have in this country is that we have very good documents, and when it comes to constitution, the policies that we make, strategic plans that we do, they are very good. But what I want to say, as much as we have a very good constitution, but we are still having the hangovers of the years that went up. Because even the current constitution, we forced ourselves to have it. Because the constitutional reforms, took almost 2 decades without realizing it. We have this constitution today thanks, unfortunately, to the events of 2007 to 2008. So these independent commissions and judiciary and other arms of government, they still suffer from that element of an attempt to try to interfere. Thank God the little things that the judiciary has done has made us to have some hope that we can still survive as a country. And finally, I think as religious community, I'm calling upon all of us that we stand for this country. Because nobody else will come and actually save us from ourselves. It's only ourselves to save us from ourselves. Thank you.
I like that. Okay. Makori, I think you've said your part, but fine. 5 seconds for you. What role do you need to play as far as NCAC to make sure that there's peace in the country?
For us, we're doing a lot of things. We have a roadmap which we launched a year and a half ago, and we're executing it, and we hope Kenyans rise up to the challenge of leadership. And for once in a while, a generation that we can transition peacefully. That's our hope, and I speak to Kenyans that they can choose the right leadership, and in the process, they choose to abide in a peaceful process.
Okay, all right. Mbuki, what do you say?
I want to respond to the issue of independence of institutions. And just late last year and early this year, I was engaged in the Youth Coordination Committee, which is basically supposed to engage young people on IEBC and, voting and registration and all that. And there's sort of an intention not to have young people vote because there will be a big swing vote. And there is a lot of fear in that. But also, finally, I would say that even as we go into elections, let's also think about expectations. Because there's expectation to win and there's expectation to lose. And how do we manage that? And I think that is very critical because we're having a discussion where some people might not actually expect they will win, and they will go actually in violence because they didn't actually expect it to happen. That violence of joy that can actually happen. So that was actually a very surprise to me. So I think we need to manage the expectation whether to win or to lose. And it's very critical that we are all together and we are here to yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and just accept. All right, Honorable Aiden, 10 seconds. Political class.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, I think the role of the political class is one role that many people actually don't understand. If you look at the opening chapter of the Constitution, sovereignty belongs to the people of Kenya and is supposed to be exercised through the elected representatives. And I think that should be very clear. And the framers of the current Constitution were not foolish. They knew what they were doing. Secondly, the issue of independence and interdependence, I think is one topic, again, many people don't understand. As far as the the role of different government entities, the judiciary, the executive, and parliament is clearly defined in the Constitution.
Okay, all right.
We can't have one arm of government completely independent from the other arm. So that is why I will always say, and I will continue to say, the issue of national interest. We have one government. Okay, we have one president. We have one country.
All right.
Notwithstanding the petty politics, we are all supposed to be loyal
to everyone. I have
not to everyone,
to the country.
to that national cause.
All right. Okay.